In this video, we're going to dig deep into the latest Warframe, VORUNA, and show you how powerful and devastating she is, and how unfortunate her werewolf aesthetic is only a visual. What's good, folks? It's Nightmare Frame here with a new Warframe video coming at you with a VORUNA build guide and review. VORUNA, the new installment in our beloved game, with fairly decent base stats, only falling behind on her horrible energy pool and in her sprint speed, which isn't a problem thanks to her first ability and passives. But remember, this is a first look and things might be subject to change in later dates, so keep an eye out on the release dates. You can farm her easily by simply purchasing her off the market or by doing the new Lua survival missions and trading in the Thraxplasm you earn to Yonta, which is a longer process. She does have a great design and feel to her, but not a frame that can be easily picked up by any player, especially someone who is a novice in Warframe mechanics. And she does require decent mods, arcanes to utilize her in a basic approach. Also, she is the first of her kind when it comes to passives, as in she has 4 different passives tied to her abilities which correlate to the wolf heads attached to her limbs that can be swapped at will. By holding down these abilities, you activate the passives, pretty much like when Lavos infuses an element on his abilities. The first ability passive gives her parkour velocity, meaning increasing the bullet jump, dodge roll speed, basically the maneuvers, which would be amazing passive for speedrunning missions. The second ability passive is her best passive, as it grants you complete status immunity, meaning you get knockdown, stagger, and elemental status effect immunity that cannot be dispelled by nullifiers, and it doesn't get removed if you fall off the map. The third ability passive grants you 100% additive heavy attack efficiency, meaning it still caps out at 90% because that is the max you can get. And her final passive, her most, unfortunately, useless one, even though it sounds powerful, it's not. Ulfrin allows you to cheat death once every 60 seconds while granting you 3 seconds of invulnerability. That's it. Why do I say it's useless? Because for one, shield gating, iframes, and even health tanking is viable on VORUNA. So there are so many ways for you to survive with her, and that this passive isn't even worth using. Maybe if you're a careless individual in arbitrations, sure. And what's even more amusing is that it's tied to her weakest ability. And all of these passives are not affected by mods, and if you remove the ability via the helmet, you will lose the effect of the passive. Speaking of abilities, let's take a look at those. Shroud of Dinar. This ability shrouds you in darkness, making you invisible to enemies. While enshrouded, you become a Night Stalker, gaining 200% movement speed for the remainder of the ability. Also, while this ability is active, your next melee attack will gain increased critical damage multiplier additive to your modded crit damage, 100% status chance, and a guaranteed bleed proc. This bleed proc works on any melee, even if it doesn't have slash. And these buffs last for a short duration, and a successful fatal strike on an enemy will further increase the duration once until it runs out. Her second ability, Fangs of Raksh, has VORUNA pounce on an enemy and apply 5 unique random status effects, all stacking up to 10 stacks. And each cast adds on 5 additional unique status effects. Pretty much every single status effect except Void. Killing the enemy afflicted will spread this effect to nearby enemies within a radius. You can synergize this with her first ability, as she remains invisible while casting it. Lyceth's Hunt, her third ability. This is a duration-based ability that increases with kills. When active, killing enemies with melee will drop health orbs, and headshot kills drop energy orbs. And this ability synergizes really well with the Equilibrium mod, sustaining her economy pretty well. And killing enemies with 5 or more status effects will increase its duration. And lastly, Ulfrun's Descent, the furry form. You drop on all fours, losing out the ability to use your equipped weapons, and are given 5 charges to expend on enemies. These attacks deal slash damage and bleeding the enemies, while also staggering them. This ability deals more damage to enemies affected by status effects, synergizing with Fangs of Raksh. And lethal hits by this ability increases the damage bonus of the remaining charges. You cannot exit the state until you use up all your charges or activate the ability once again to prematurely end it. The damage scaling is quite low and requires a lot of setup to kill normal units in Steel Path. And this is the ability you will swap out when using a helmet, unless DE decides to buff the damage on this ability. But it's pretty strong in star charts, so yeah. Alright, with all that aside, looking at the abilities and passives, while you saw the background footage, she does look very powerful. She is, but she's also clunky. Casting your abilities in quick succession or activating them can actually cause you to accidentally remove her passives, or cast a new one. Her first ability is a simple yet mediocre ability. Its buffs don't last that long, but feel powerful for that one single hit, reminding me a lot of Mesa's first ability. Her second ability is her bread and butter for damage and survivability. If you want giga damage, then this is it. And that absolute status immunity means spending less time on your butt is a huge DPS increase. Third ability offers nice sustainment, but as a melee frame, forced to do headshots for energy drops does kill the flow of the game, and people will just opt out from doing that and stick to the equilibrium and synth combo for health to energy conversion. And finally, the main thing that was supposed to make her a werewolf frame is her biggest letdown. This frame is great for big melee damage synergy, but will fall short in a lot of missions that aren't endurance focused and have a team. She feels more of a solo frame than a frame that can be played with others. She can be used to be a speed frame for capture and rescue missions, but that's about it when it comes to flexibility. She's a good frame but not that great, making her a solid B+ frame. If this rating hurts your feelings about your furry fantasies, well, good. It's a video game. Get over yourselves. And for the Archon Shards, I highly recommend for you to use the Amber Shards, the yellow Archon Shards that increase your casting speed. And if you have additional blue ones, I suggest using those as well, because Voruna has a horrible energy pool. Alright, now let's take a look at the builds. The first build is situated around AoE melee nuking, using heavy attacks and spreading status effects. The helmet I use here is Marked for Death. This ability comes from the helmet system itself. You cast this ability on a target, stunning the target and marking it for death. Killing this marked target will distribute a portion of that damage in the area within line of sight, and this damage portion caps out at 150% and scales of power strength. The damage cannot exceed the target's remaining health, meaning you gotta select a chunky healthy boy to spread the damage for it to actually deal damage. The combo is either applying 2 casts of Fangs of Raksh on the enemy and marking it, or marking it and applying the Raksh. Either setup works, and then you just melee heavy attack to spread the affliction and status effects at the same time, without the need to prime enemies with an epitaph or nucor. In the aura, I have Steel Charge for that 60% melee base damage, and it also grants me additional mod capacity. Range is at 190% thanks to Cutting Drift, Archon Stretch, and Augur Reach. Archon Stretch will proc from Fangs of Raksh, as it's an ability that can proc electric status effect, so that's some free energy regen. Power strength at 183% with Umbral Intensify, Augur Secrets, and Amar's Hatred. Amar's Hatred is used for some utility for that 10-meter teleportation on a heavy attack. Power strength will increase my crit damage, the damage output of my abilities, and Mark for Death. Rolling Guard for the added survivability and helps us engage and disengage. And finally, Prime Flow and Equilibrium for the energy pool and energy and health economy from Equilibrium, which pairs up with my Panzer Vopophyla using the Synth Deconstruct and Synth Fiber mods. Arcane Strike for the increase in attack speed on my melee, and Eruption for the additional crowd control and survivability. And this is the Panzer Vopophyla build that I'll use on other builds, with its Viral Quills and Synth mods to benefit Equilibrium, along with the survivability mods. The second build is common yet unique. It's a variation of the first build. Now this one is utilizing Terrify from Necros, which armor strips enemies and has them run away from fear. If you equip the augment Creeping Terrify, you will slow them down depending on your power strength. And to keep up with the wolf aesthetics, I will be running the Mecha set on this build. The Aura Mecha Empowered will have a Kubro mark an enemy every 30 seconds for 9 seconds, and the marked target takes 150% extra damage, and the set bonus grants an effect that synergizes with Voruna, because killing a marked target will spread the status effects that they were affected with to all enemies within the area. Equipping additional set mods will increase the range of the spread and not the damage, and this bonus damage stacks multiplicatively with similar multipliers such as faction damage, and also multiplies the damage with each calculation, pretty much doubling each status effect's damage while further increasing each tick. So if enemies have no armor and are marked, you can one-shot an area with just casting the second ability alone. Anyway, let's have a look at the build. In the Aura, I have Mecha Empowered. Unfortunately, I could not equip Mecha Pulse to this build because it just won't fit. Range at 190 with Cunning, Stretch, and Augur Reach. Strength at 168 with Umbral Intensify and Augur Secrets to give me 100% armor strip on Terrify, and also using the augment Creeping Terrify to slow down the enemies so they don't run away from the AoE nuke. In the Arcanes, I have Arcane Energize and Molt Efficiency. Only reason I'm using Energize is because that Terrify can be expensive to cast, and you can't always rely on your pet to be alive to benefit from the synth mods, and in most cases you will one-shot enemies without even using your melee. And Molt for the duration increase when you have shields. You can also run Eruption for even more survivability. And for my Predasite, it is the Vizier. Simple to form a build with the synth mods and its 2 breed specific mods. And the third build, which I will make a dedicated video for, since I find this to be my favorite build because it is the one used for level cap disruption, allowing you to one-tap Demolish without armor stripping. I'm priming the Demolishers with 2 casts of my second ability and going invisible to then heavy attack with a condition overload melee at max combo. And if the target is still alive, I finish it off with Expedite Suffering. This is a helmet ability that comes from the system itself. It takes all the bleed or toxin procs that will deal damage over time to deal all its damage in one go, with a multiplier on top of it, hence the name. Expedite Suffering. I have Swift Momentum in the Aura for the combo duration and heavy attack wind-up speed. Prime Sure-Footed for the stagger and knockdown resistance because I won't be using the second ability passive but the third instead for the heavy attack efficiency. Power Strength at 223% to increase the damage multiplier of Expedite Suffering. Streamline will help out because it is for disruption. You can't rely on your Panzer to be alive most of the time, and random modifiers can hurt this build. However, if you do encounter an energy drain conduit, you will still have a primer equipped just in case. Arcane Fury for the melee base damage and Arcane Strike for the attack speed. And the melee and build I'm using for this loadout is Tenet Livia, the two-handed Nikana, modded for a hybrid combo and heavy attack loadout. It doesn't have range as it is a single target damage focused build. With the passive alone, I drain 2 times combo, and the great thing about the Tenet Livia is that it holds its combo duration while holstered. To help build combo faster, I'm using the Operator Arcane Magus Anomaly. With a single transference in and out, I drag in enemies towards me. Since I won't be able to reach them properly, this groups them all up into one clump so my swings can hit multiple enemies in one go. And my primer of choice is the Epitaph, using the quick tap fire to force proc cold and blast along with your modded elements. Alright, the final build is the meme build. Of course, we gotta have one. It is centered around her first ability and her first ability passive, built for speed and parkour velocity. The build has a bunch of sprint speed mods, energy, and power strength. The strength is there to boost the effectiveness of my helmet ability, Infested Mobility. Make sure you have the Praetos with a sprint speed passive and a primary with Amalgam Serration, and you're pretty much good to go. Simple yet fun build, very useful for capture and rescue missions. Anyway, that has been it from this Voruna build guide and review video. I hope you've learned something and enjoyed it. And if you did, feel free to leave a like, share, and subscribe for more Warframe content, streams, and so much more. Do refer to the description. Thanks for watching, and as always, peace.